Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about the 17th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. The idea here is a continuation of what Bhagavan was talking about in the previous paragraph, paragraph 16, which we talked about last time. The main subject that Bhagavan was talking about in paragraph 16 is the futility of studying philosophical texts, particularly a text of Advaita, without limit. That is, well, Indian philosophy is a vast ocean, and there are many different darshanas, many different views, and which are classified in various different ways. But one of the views is Vedanta, a conclusion of Vedanta. But even Vedanta consists of various different views, one of which is Advaita. And the texts written on Advaita are numerous. There's the source text, the Prasthanatraya, which consists of the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita. Then there are commentaries on those. And so many other, that has spawned so much other literature. There's so many texts we can study on Advaita, and there's so many different views, even among Advaitins. Not all are of the same view, not all interpret things in the same way. So we can go on studying the texts of Advaita themselves endlessly. And if we want to study other philosophies, there's no limit to the amount of philosophy we can study. But Bhagavan says, but studying without limit is of no benefit. That is, we need to understand what is the practical implication of all these texts. And so he begins paragraph 16 by saying, since in every text, meaning philosophical text, particularly philosophical texts of Advaita, it is said that for attaining mukti, it is necessary to make the mind cease. After knowing that cessation of mind, mano-nigraha, alone is the ultimate intention or aim or purpose of such texts, there's no benefit to be gained by studying texts without limit. For making the mind cease, it's necessary for one to investigate oneself, to see who one is. But instead of doing so, how can one see oneself, see what one actually is by investigating in texts? In other words, we can't know ourselves by studying texts. Texts are useful to the extent that they direct our attention back at ourselves. But if we just go on studying the text without turning our attention back to ourselves, it is futile. So this is the main subject that Bhagavan was talking about in the 16th paragraph. And towards the end of the paragraph, in the first sentence, he said, for attaining mukti, it's necessary to make the mind cease. So later on, he defines what is mukti. He gives a very nice definition of mukti by saying, but by investigating who is oneself, who is in bondage, knowing one's yathartha swarupa, that's one's own actual nature, alone is mukti. So knowing ourselves alone is mukti, and we can know ourselves only by investigating ourselves is the implication. So what does it mean to investigate ourselves? He then explains, sadakalamum manate atmavil veitirupadakutan atmavicharam endrupaya. The name atmavichara refers only to to always keeping the mind fixed on oneself, on atma. So self-investigation is not investigating in the text, is not studying the text. It is turning our attention back and fixing our attention or our mind only on ourselves. So this is the main subject that Bhagavan is talking about in the 16th paragraph. So this 17th paragraph is a continuation of this. If we begin studying texts of any Indian philosophical text, including texts of Vedanta, one of the ideas we come across is tattvas. The word tattva Tat means that, and the suffix tva means ness, like more or less like the English suffix ness. So tattva literally means thatness. So tattva we can translate more freely as realities, but the tattvas in many systems of philosophy are the basic ontological principles. But what tattva actually ultimately means is reality, what actually exists. All systems of Indian philosophy all talk about different numbers of tattvas. In Buddhism, they don't use the term tattva, they talk about dhammas. Dhamma is a Pali term, Pali equivalent of dharmas. So dharmas basically means, well, the meaning of it depends, it varies greatly according to the context, but one of the meaning is phenomena, and another meaning is ontological principle, much the same as tattva. So in all different schools of Indian philosophy, and the Jains also had their own classification of tattvas, and the different schools of so-called Hindu philosophy, they also have their own classifications. The school of philosophy that dwelt most upon the subject of tattvas is Sankhya. Sankhya, the word Sankhya means enumeration, because they enumerated the tattvas. That is, according to Sankhya. Sankhya is a fundamentally dualistic system of philosophy. They distinguish, the basic duality according to Sankhya, to put it in simple terms, we can say subject and object. The subject, the perceiver, the witnessing consciousness, they call Purusha. And that is entirely distinct from Prakriti, which is everything that is perceived. Everything that is known, all objects, all phenomena are Prakriti. Purusha is the subject. But according to Sankhya, there's not just one subject, there are many subjects, there are many Purushas. So the Purusha is very simple. Though somehow they say very many Purushas, but Purusha is distinct from Prakriti. Prakriti is everything perceived. All objects, all phenomena are Prakriti. And in Sankhya, they enumerate 24 tattvas. The first tattva being Prakriti itself, and that Prakriti then evolves into 23 other tattvas, which are, if I remember correctly, the first one is Mahat, which is more or less equivalent to Buddhi, the intellect, and Ahankara, ego, Manas, mind. So that and Prakriti make up the first 4. And then the other 20 are the 5 sense organs, the 5 organs of action, the 5 subtle elements or tanmatras, and the 5 gross elements, earth, water, air, fire, and space. So they enumerate these 24 tattvas. These are often referred to also in other systems of philosophy, but other systems of philosophy have their own variations on these. And in some Advaita texts, instead of the first 4, Prakriti, Mahat, Ahankara, Manas, they say the 4 antakaranas, the Manam, Buddhi, Chittam, and Ahankaram. And then the other 20 are the same. That's in many Advaita texts, it's expressed like that. And in other systems of philosophy, in some systems of Shaiva philosophy, they have 36 tattvas. And every system had their own idea, well, what are the tattvas? And tattvas, the general idea of tattva, they're basic elements, but constitute all experience, the basic building blocks of experience. So though this idea, it's native to Sankhya, it somehow percolated into all other systems of philosophy, including even Advaita. According to Bhagavan, there is only one tattva. What is that one tattva? Tattva means what is. Tattva, as I said, means thatness. In other words, it means what is real. According to Bhagavan, only one thing is real. So in verse 43 of Aranachakshramlai, he sings Tāṇai Tāṇai tattvam, idaṇai tāṇai kārtuvai aranachala. That is two sentences. The first is a statement and the second is a prayer. The first statement is Tāṇai Tāṇai tattvam. Tāṇai Tāṇai is the tattva. That alone is the reality. Tāṇai Tāṇai, Tān means oneself, or it means self. It can refer to oneself or yourself, but in this context, it means oneself. Tāṇai, A is an intensifying suffix. So Tāṇai means oneself alone. Tāṇai Tāṇai, we can interpret it in two ways. We can either take it, but Bhagavan, to add further emphasis, he's saying oneself alone is the reality. That is, he's emphasizing very firmly, oneself alone is the reality. Or another way we can interpret it, we can take Tāṇai Tān to mean oneself alone is oneself. Bhagavan often said, Nāṉ Ār, I am I. And for example, in the final verse of in the final line of the last verse of Appalapātu, the song on the Appalam, Bhagavan ends by saying, Tāṇai, I think it's Tāṇai Tāṇāha Bhujika. That means, okay, now I'll just get the verse. Yes, verse 4, last line. Tāṇai Tāṇāha Bhujika taṇṇai appala-mittu-paru. So that is what is the purpose of making this? He's using making an appalam. Or papadum, as they're often called, or papadum, or they're different names in different Indian languages. But Bhagavan uses the making of an appalam as an analogy for the process of spiritual sadhana. But the aim of it is to eat the appalam. So eating the appalam, what is it analogous to? Tāṇai Tāṇāha Bhujika, experiencing oneself alone is oneself. So here, Tāṇai Tāṇāha clearly means oneself alone is oneself. So in this verse 24 of Aksharamlai, we can take Tāṇai Tāṇāha to mean oneself alone is oneself. That is the reality. Or we can take it to mean oneself alone is the reality. It amounts to the same thing, because what are we? We are nothing other than ourselves. And we alone are the reality. So he says, Tāṇai Tāṇai tattvam. That he first makes a statement, oneself alone is the reality. And then he prays, Tāṇai, idaṇai, this, Tāṇai, Tāṇai here he's referring to Aranachala, yourself. Tāṇai, idaṇai tāṇai kārtuvai aranachala. You yourself reveal this to me, Aranachala. That is, he's praying to Aranachala to reveal this. But what is the reality? But the reality is only oneself. So according to Bhagavan, there is only one tattva, and that one tattva is oneself. So for Bhagavan, enumerating numerous tattvas is unnecessary. All the tattvas enumerated in Sankhya, they are all anatma, they're all non-self, they're all things other than what we actually are. And as I say, though those ideas originate from Sankhya, many Sankhya ideas are somehow percolated into Advaita texts. So in some Advaita texts, they analyze, for example, the subtle body. Normally it is said the subtle body consists of 3 of the 5 koshas, the pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, and vijnanamaya kosha. The sheath of life, the sheath of mind, and the sheath of intellect. But these are further subdivided. It is said that in most texts it is said that the subtle body consists of 17 elements. The 17 tattvas. The 17 elements are mind and intellect, and the 5 or the panchavayu. Sorry, we'll go from the subtlest to the grossest. Buddhi and manas, they're the 2 subtlest. Then they're further subdivided into the 5 organs of action, the 5 sense organs, and the 5 pranas, 5 different types of prana. That is, prana here means the physiological functions. So they classify 5 types of physiological functions. The 5 organs of action are, if I can remember correctly, the mouth, the hands, the feet, the genitals, and the anus, or something like that. They've got 5 organs of action, and they're also the 5 sense organs. So all these 17 are said to constitute the subtle body. And other texts say, no, they're not 17, they're 19, because they add in chittam and ahankaram to make up 19. So majority of texts say 17, some say 19. The reason those texts that say 17, the reason they don't include the chittam and ahankaram, because they are not part of the subtle body according to this understanding of subtle body, because the chittam is the anandamaya kosha, the karana sarira, and ahankara is not any of the 5 sheaths. It's that which identifies all these 5 sheaths as oneself. But I've explained all this just to say all this type of enumeration, according to Bhagavan, is totally unnecessary. Why is it unnecessary? Because these are all non-self. Why should we endlessly analyze and classify and enumerate the different constituents of the non-self and analyze what their properties are and what their number are? This is all totally unnecessary. What is our aim? As he said in the previous paragraph, our aim is just to know ourselves. And in order to know ourselves, we need to turn our attention within. So that I've said all that just as a prelude to this paragraph, so you understand what is meant by tattva and what the reason why Bhagavan is saying this here. Wait a second, I'll just... that is the context in which this Bhagavan said this, that is Shiva Prakasham Pillai, according to the early question and answer versions. Shiva Prakasham Pillai had asked the question, this is in the 30 question and answer version, question 20, Muktil Virupum Ullavanaku. For those who desire mukti, Taṇṇai ulla tattvāṅgaļ vichāranai abhasyamai. Is it necessary to investigate, or is investigation of tattvas, which are other than oneself, is it necessary? So Shiva Prakasham Pillai already understood it's not necessary. That's why he framed his question in this way. And it's in the later 28 question and answer version, which was adapted from the earlier 30 question and answer version, incorporating some of the changes that Bhagavan made when he rewrote it as an essay version. The question is worded in more or less the same way. So that was Shiv Prakash Pillai's question. And so what Bhagavan says in this paragraph was an answer to that. Bhagavan gives a very nice analogy. What he says in this essay version, because Bhagavan simplified it in the essay version, he said, kuppaiyai-k taḻḻa-vēṇḍiya oruvaṉ, adai ārāyvadāl eppaḍi-p payaṉ-illai-y-ō, just as one who has to gather up or sweep up and throw away rubbish would derive no benefit by examining it. So that's the analogy. Appaḍi-y-ē, likewise, so also, taṉṉai-āṛiya-vēṇḍiya oruvaṉ, one who needs to know oneself, maṟaittu-koṇḍirukkum tattvas aṉaittaiyum, sērttu-t taḻḻi-viḍāmal. Instead of collectively rejecting or discarding all the tattvas which are concealing oneself, instead of doing so, avai ittaṉai-y-eṉṭṛu kaṇakkiḍuvadāl-um, analyzing how many they are, calculating how many they are, avaṭṛiṉ guṇaṅgaḻai ārāyvadāl-um payaṉ-illai. It is useless to analyze how many there are and what are their different qualities. So according to Bhagavan, all this analysis of different tattvas is all futile, because those tattvas, none of them are real. They're concealing what we are. So long as our attention is on anything other than ourselves, we are identifying ourselves as a body, because it's only when we rise as ego and identify ourselves as a body that we become aware of anything else. As Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uludunapadu, uruvum tāṇāyan uluhu paramatran. If oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? That is, it's only when we rise as ego and consequently take ourselves to be a body consisting of which is a form consisting of 5 sheaths, do we become aware of other forms. When we don't experience ourselves as a form, as for example in sleep, we don't experience ourselves as a form, and therefore we don't see any other forms. Forms seem to exist only when we limit ourselves, or as if we were a form. So it's only if in a formless state, there can be no multiplicity, because it's only forms. We can distinguish one form from another. What are forms? Forms are things that we can be distinguished one from another. But in a state of our real nature is devoid of form. So it's devoid of multiplicity, because there's nothing to distinguish. There's no things to distinguish from each other. All there is the pure awareness. That is what we actually are. So long as we are aware of multiplicity, of anything other than ourselves, we have limited ourselves as a form of a body. In other words, we've risen as ego and we limited ourselves as a form of body, and consequently we are aware of all this multiplicity. And then we begin analyzing multiplicity. What are the ontological principles? What are the fundamental building blocks of all this multiplicity? And so different systems of philosophy have different, they consider different elements to be fundamental ontological principles. Ontological principles means fundamental. Ontology is what exists. Is the philosophy of existence. So ontological principles are whatever basic constituents of existence. According to Bhagavan, there's only one ontological principle. We are that. There's no tattva other than ourselves. We alone are the real tattva. But here, the tattvas he's referring to here are all these, are all the elements into which the non-self has been analyzed by various schools of philosophy. It doesn't matter what the school of philosophy is, whether it's Sankhya or any other school. If they enumerate more than one tattva, if they consider that there's more than one tattva, they're talking about the non-self, because we ourselves are one. We ourselves alone are the one real tattva. Since all these tattvas constitute the non-self, there's no point in analyzing them. This is why, though Bhagavan explained to us, though Bhagavan gave us reasons to understand why we are not this body or mind, any of the five sheaves, Bhagavan didn't go into didn't dwell much upon these things. That is, it is necessary for us to understand, but all these things are not ourselves. But we don't have to go on analyzing them. I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. We're not any of these things. We're not any phenomena. Anything that appears and disappears cannot be what we actually are. Because in whose view does it appear and disappear? It appears and disappears in my view. So who am I? We need to turn our attention back to ourselves. We have that to which all other things appear. That to which all other things appear is ego. If we investigate this ego will subside and merge back into its source, and then the reality of ego alone will remain. What is the reality of ego? Only that fundamental awareness of our own existence, I am. That alone is the real tattva. Taṇṇai tattvam. I am. Oneself alone is the tattva, or oneself alone is the tattva. So there's no real tattva other than ourselves. All other tattvas are, since they're other than ourselves, they're non-self. So why should we analyze them? So here Bhagavan has, as I say, he's given this analogy of when there's rubbish to be discarded, you have to sweep it up, gather it all together, and throw it away. There's no point in analyzing it. When he originally gave this reply to Shiv Prakash Pillai, he actually said a bit more. That is, he described this. He elaborated on this analogy. He described it in a more graphic way. What he said in the earlier question and answer version, this is what Shiv Prakash Pillai recorded of what Bhagavan originally said was, Ambaṭaṇ. Ambaṭaṇ means barber. Ambaṭaṇ kuppaiyai-k, kūṭṭi-t, taḷḻa-vēṇḍiya oruvaṉ. One who is to collect and discard all the barber's rubbish, all the rubbish in a barber shop. Adil ittaṉai-y-eṉṭṛu aṉaittaiyum kaṇakkiḍuvadāl-um avaṭṛiṉ nīlam niram mudliya guṇaṅgaḻai ārāyvadāl-um eppaḍi-p payaṉ-illai-y-ō. That is what he's saying there. If you have to sweep up the rubbish in a barber shop, you need to just sweep it up and discard it. You shouldn't. It's futile to begin analyzing the hair, to counting how many hairs there are, and to analyzing their gunas, what is their length, what is their color, and so on. All these qualities. It's useless to analyze all these things because they're all to be discarded. So, but just that who in their right sense, who, if we were given the job of sweeping a barber shop, who in their right sense would collect all the hairs together and begin counting how many hairs there are and begin analyzing how many short ones, how many medium length ones, how many long ones, how many very long ones, and how many gray ones, how many red ones, how many black ones, how many henna dyed ones or whatever. We don't need to analyze. It's all rubbish. It needs to be discarded. Such is Bhagavan's view of tattvas. All these tattvas they talk about in text, they're all just to be discarded. So we shouldn't give a second thought to these things. So Bhagavan is very strongly cautioning us here not to allow ourselves to be distracted by all this analysis of the non-self, which unfortunately exists not only in the texts of other philosophies. Okay, in Sankhya, all this is meaningful because Sankhya is a dualistic system. It takes Purusha and Prakriti, both are real. So it begins to analyze Prakriti into 24 tattvas. That is meaningful if you take it all to be real, but according to Advaita, none of this is real. It's all an appearance. So why to analyze what is not real? What? If it's not real, it has to be discarded. What we are here to know is only what is real. So we need to discard everything that is unreal. So we shouldn't be analyzing these tattvas. How many tattvas are there? Are there 26 tattvas, 24 tattvas, or 20 or 36 tattvas? Or each system of philosophy has enumerated its own philosophy, its own tattvas. And if you have these tattvas, then they have qualities. What is the quality of this tattva? What's the quality of this tattva? How is this tattva related to that tattva? How does this tattva evolve from that tattva? We can go on analyzing these things for all eternity. There's no end to it, but it's all futile. According to Bhagavan, it's all totally futile. Why? Because it's all rubbish. It all just needs to be collectively sērttu-t. We need to gather it all together and reject it all in one go. We don't have to analyze what has to be rejected. It's all just rubbish. So everything other than I is rubbish. Why should we allow our mind to dwell on what is not ourself? So analyzing how many constituents the subtle body consists of, this is futile. But you find if you study Advaita, traditional Advaita textbooks, books like Vedanta Saram, they go there verses after verses after verses analyzing all these things. According to Bhagavan, all this is futile. We need not analyze the non-self. We just need to understand that is not what we are, so who am I? Once we understand that none of these things are ourself, it's futile to analyze them. We just need to investigate what we ourself actually are. And then Bhagavan says that's the first sentence, the main sentence of this paragraph, because there's just two sentences in this paragraph. In the next sentence, he says, prapanjate or swapnate pol eni kolla vendum. That means it is necessary to consider the world like a dream. Though he says here pol, which means like, it's clear from what he says in the next paragraph and what he said on so many other occasions, this world is nothing but a dream. It's not just like a dream, it is actually a dream. But he put it in a mild way here. It's all to be considered to be just like a dream. In a dream, do we analyze after we wake up from a dream, do we think about the dream? Oh, in the dream, I saw this beautiful big building. How many people built that building? How many bricks is it made of? What's the nature of the material? Is it made of bricks, or is it made of stone, or is it made of concrete? What are the constituents? We don't analyze these things because we know it's all just a mental fabrication. It's all just to be rejected. Once you wake from a dream ceases to have any importance. Even while you're dreaming, the dream is not important. It just seems to be important because we seem to be a part of that dream world. So Bhagavan says this entire world we should look upon as just a dream. We shouldn't. So all these tattvas are what constitute the world we see. In other words, the world here means all phenomena, whether physical phenomena or mental phenomena, all constitute the world. It's all just a dream, like it's all just a mental fabrication. The term he uses here to refer to world is prapañca, which is a very interesting term in Indian philosophy. The world is often referred to as prapañca. If you ask people the meaning, if you listen to people explaining the meaning of the term prapañca, there are two ways in which there are two ways in which it's often explained. It's often said that the world is called prapañca because it consists of the 5 elements. In other words, we're back to, again, analyzing enumerating the tattvas, because the 5 elements are part of the tattvas. So people say pancha means 5. So prapañca means it consists of 5 elements. That is one explanation that is often given. Another explanation which is sometimes given is the world is nothing but, as Bhagavan says in verse 6 of verse 6 of Ulladu, the world is nothing but the 5 kinds of sense impression. In other words, sights, sounds, tactile sensations, smells, and tastes. That's all the world consists of. Thereunder, he says, nothing else. So the world doesn't consist of anything but these 5 kinds of sense perception. So some people say, oh, the world is called prapañca because it's just the 5 kinds of sense perception. Neither of those explanations actually are correct. The reason why the world is called prapañca, the word pancha, as I say, it means 5. But why it means 5, it is derived from a verb, punch or pach, which means to spread out. If you spread out the fingers of your hand, you get 5. That is why the word pancha that is 5 in Sanskrit is pancha. Because it's what's spread out. If you spread out your hand, you can see the 5 fingers. So that is why. But how the word pancha, in the sense of 5, is derived. But in the case of this word prapañca, the world is what is spread out. That is, it is all a projection. When we rise as ego, we ourselves expand as this world. When we begin to dream, what is the dream? It's nothing but our own mind spread out as that dream world. So that is the significance of this word prapañca. So all multiplicity exists in whose view? Only in the view of ego. So it is ego that sees itself as all this multiplicity. Ego is spread out. Sometimes Maya, the power of Maya, is said to consist of 2 powers. The āvarana Shakti, that is the power of veiling, in other words, ignorance, and Vikshepa Shakti. Vikshepa means the dispersing. Actually, both of these are simultaneously. As soon as we rise as ego, we are aware of ourselves as I am this body. That is the ignorance. The ignorance is I am this body. That's the avarana. And as soon as we limit ourselves as I am this body, we see all this multiplicity. So the avarana and the vikshepa always go hand in hand. Because we cover ourselves, we veil our real nature, we see ourselves as something other than what we are, and consequently we see all this multiplicity. So all this multiplicity that we see, this is all Vikshepa Shakti, it's all spread out. That is why it's called prapañca. So it's all, this is non-self. The whole prapañca is what is not ourself. It's all just a dream. When we understand that a dream is just, so long as we're dreaming a dream, it seems to us to be real. And everything that happens seems to be to us to be of great consequence. If we're hungry, we want food. And if we get dream food, our dream hunger is satisfied. If we are threatened by some danger, if we're being, if we are on the edge of a cliff, or if we are being chased by a monster or something, if we feel ourselves to be in danger, at that time, it all seems very real. It's all very important to us. Once we wake up from a dream, we realize, oh, it was all just my own mental fabrication. So it ceases to lose it, it loses its importance. It's no longer important to us once we understand that it's a dream. That is why Bhagavan says here, but we should consider the world to be like a dream. We shouldn't attach any importance to the world. The world here means not just the physical world, the whole, everything that is spread out, all multiplicity, all phenomena, all are just like the phenomena we perceive in a dream. And they have no more reality. It's just and when we rise as ego, we ourselves spread out as all this. We see ourselves as all this, just as in a dream. When we're dreaming, what are we seeing? What is it that we are seeing as that dream world? It's just our own mind, our own self we are seeing as the dream world. Likewise, all what we are now seeing as all this is ourself. But so long as we're seeing ourselves as all this, we're not seeing ourselves as we actually are, because we are one, not many. So long as we see multiplicity, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. Well, when we know what we actually are, we'll know there's nothing, but we alone exist. Nothing else exists. So nothing else will even seem to exist. So since all this is since everything other than ourselves is totally unreal, there's no point in analyzing it. We should discard it, just as we may have a very terrifying dream or a very exciting dream. We may, in a dream, we may win the lottery and be very happy. Oh, now I've got lots of money. We begin planning what we're going to do with all our lottery money. Then we wake up, we discard the whole thing. It was all just a dream. I haven't won the lottery at all. Or if we were undergoing a terrifying experience, it's terrifying so long as we're dreaming. When we wake up, it's all just a dream. We are relieved from that. So just like whatever we experience in a dream loses its significance, it loses any importance once we wake up. Likewise, if we look upon all phenomena as just a dream, why should we then begin thinking, how many tattvas constitute all that I perceive here? And why should we consider how many tattvas there are and what are the qualities of all these tattvas, and how all this world is constituted of all these tattvas? Another thing in Advaita Sastras, they often, that is what Bhagavan has taught us, is the simplest form of Advaita. Bhagavan taught Drishti Shrishti Vada. That is, he taught whatever is seen exists only in the view of the seer. That is, all phenomena exist only in the view of ego. So nothing exists independent of our perception of it. The world is nothing but the 5 kinds of sense perception, sense phenomena, sense impressions, as Bhagavan says in verse 6 of Uludunapadu. So nothing exists independent of our perception of it. That is the simplest and the purest form of Advaita. But in many Advaita texts, they talk from the perspective of Shrishti Drishti Vada. That is, the reality is Brahman. Brahman mixed with Brahman associated with Maya becomes Ishvara. Ishvara had created this world. How has he created this world? First, he created Mahat. He begins to go through the Sankhya cosmology. First, Mahat is produced, and then from Mahat comes Manas and Buddhi, Manas and Ahankaram, and then from Manas and Ahankaram evolved the 5 tanmatras, the subtle elements, and from the subtle elements something else evolves, and all this is there. All this, according to Bhagavan, this is just like instead of sweeping up and discarding all the rubbish in a barber shop, sitting down and beginning to count how many hairs there are, what are the different qualities of the hair, what are their colors, what are their lengths, what are their, some are curly, some are straight, some are, it's all, this is unnecessary. It's all rubbish. It's all to be discarded. Likewise, all phenomena are to be discarded. We are not to analyze how many tattvas constitute all these phenomena and how these tattvas were combined, and from which tattva did which tattva originate, and what is the result of a combination. Each phenomena is a combination of this tattva and this guna, and endlessly we can analyze these things. We can go on. It's all totally unreal. It's all totally unnecessary and totally unreal. Why? Because it's all just a dream. Do we analyze how all the things that we perceive in a dream were created? No, it's all totally unnecessary. According to Bhagavan, there's only one thing that we need to investigate. We need to investigate, who am I? We need to know what we ourselves are. Everything else is non-self, and it is unreal. What is real is only ourself. As he says in verse 13 of Ulujunaptu, Jnanamam Tāṇai me, oneself, who is awareness, meaning pure awareness, jnana, alone is real. Tāṇai tattvam, oneself alone is the reality. Or in the 7th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, he says, Yatātamai ulladu atmasrupamondre. What actually exists is only the real nature of oneself, atmasvarupa. We alone are what actually exists. Everything else is unreal. So why should we investigate anything that is unreal, anything that is not ourself? We need to investigate only ourself. So Bhagavan, in this paragraph, he's very forcibly telling us not to take interest in other things, and not to allow ourselves to be distracted by all these texts, including many Advaita texts, but begin to analyze the non-self. As soon as they begin analyzing the non-self, you can be sure they're going off in a tangent. They're going in the wrong direction. What is the true subject matter of Advaita? The true subject matter is there is only one thing without a second. Ekam-eva advaityam. What is that one thing? Tattvamasi. You are that. So if I am that, then what should I investigate? Only myself. I shouldn't investigate anything other than myself. So the implication here is, as Bhagavan says, he refers to, in the first sentence, he says, y-ārāyvadāl oruvaṉ, one who should know oneself. That is, what he's implying here is what we all need to know is only ourselves and not anything else. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.